You're listening to the My Simplified Life podcast, and this is episode number 236. Welcome to the My Simplified Life podcast, a place where you will learn that your past and even your present don't define your future. Regardless of what stage of life you're in, I want you to feel inspired and encouraged to pursue your dreams, simplify your life, and start taking action. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac, author of How to Get on Podcasts, the podcast matchmaker, and CEO and founder of the MLG Collective. I'm excited to share my stories and life lessons with you while taking you on my own journey. This is My Simplified Life. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac, the podcast matchmaker and the pod influencer. We're going to talk about that word, pod influencer, today. Before we get to it, don't forget to leave a review for How to Get on Podcasts over on Amazon. I know I am harping on you all so much, and yet it helps me to ask and to get those reviews. So here we go. Pod influencers. Spotify released a survey last week, and it was a global survey on what podcasts are doing, where they're growing, who's listening, and the surge of the Podfluencer. I'm sure you've heard of bookfluencers, social media influencers. And what are those, first of all? Those are individuals who are using their platforms to really showcase and highlight books that they love, products that they love, and a lot of times they might get paid for promoting these things. They might get free books for promoting them. And a podfluencer is basically the same thing, except we're not always getting paid. Most of us are not getting paid, in fact. But a podfluencer means that it's someone who is a podcast host who is influencing listeners and followers. And I love this term, podfluencer. I hadn't thought of myself as this before, and yet I don't consider myself a bookfluencer because I promote many other things outside of books. And Podfluencer just kind of speaks to me. So of course I have the domain now, thepodfluencer.com. I want to share with you just some of the results that Spotify came up with that I've also shared on my Instagram last week. The first one is that 55% of Gen Zs said that if they follow someone on social media and listen to their podcast, they like their podcast content more. Now, isn't this interesting? Because how are you showing up on your Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, whatever it is? How do you show up there versus a podcast? And I think that what they love about podcasts, what I love about podcasts, is that we get to hear directly from the person, the host, the guest, whoever it is. And we can get to know them. We can understand more why they believe what they believe, or if they're talking about a book or a product or a service that they've utilized, why they're so passionate about it. I think this also brings up a great point of you can hear the tone of someone's voice when they are really excited about something versus when they're just, here it is. Maybe I pop it on Instagram and we'll see what happens and I'm not really into it, but you can't hear that tone on a post versus hearing me right now. What am I saying? How excited am I about the word podfluencer and what this is doing? Did I read this book and I just love it so much and I want all of you to share it as well? Yes, that is one of the reasons why podcast content is so great. This is why I share with every listener, every client, every prospect, how a podcast allows people to hear you and your words. It's an intimate conversation that others are now privy to. And you don't get that on social media unless there's a live. But if you don't catch it, then you miss it. And it's so different to have a podcast and to get that intimacy, to get the quote authenticity, to hear from someone day after day, week after week, show after show. They are showing up, whether it's a host or a guest. You get to hear from them in their own words. And that's one of the greatest things. Another one, nearly half, 48% of Gen Zs and millennials are more likely to be interested in ads or products when promoted by their favorite podcaster. This goes back to the know, like, trust factor. And podcast hosts work really hard on creating this. We're sharing ourselves. You know, I show up and I am not going to lie to you when I say, I read this book and I loved it. I tried this product and I loved it. I am someone who will shout from the rooftops when I love something. And so I've gained that trust from all of you. And podcasts allow guests to do the same thing. That trust is extended to whoever I bring on the show because you trust that I'm not going to have some fly-by-night on my show. I'm not going to spend an hour with them and then ask you to do the same if I don't believe in them, if I don't believe in what they do or their story. So this is why it is so important to consider that when you're looking at podcasts and you're looking at products or ads, and why people who are interested in guesting or in purchasing an ad spot should be looking at podcasts, because these are trusted people, trusted platforms that have worked hard to ensure that they have that know, like, trust factor, and to extend it to you is an absolute gift. Here's another one for you. 45% of millennials and Gen Zs said that when they hear an ad during a podcast, they trust the brand or product being promoted because of the trusted relationship they have with the hosts. Did I not just say that? Yes. It's because you're hearing me. I'm in your ear. Your podcast host is someone that you have gotten used to. There are friendships that are coming out of this. You trust the person that is giving you this information every single week, that is showing up, that is sharing of themselves, that is creating conversations so that they become better people, you become better people, so we can all learn from each other. And that is why that brand or product that's being promoted is going to have that trust already extended with the promotion of it, because that trust is already there. The foundation has been laid. Now let's talk about listening. In the US, the number of podcast shows streamed per person has increased 15% year over year, showing growing interest in new content. Think back to COVID. The pandemic hit and listeners kind of slowed down. We didn't know what we were doing. Nobody's commuting. We're not going to the gym like we were. And then all of a sudden, we realized that this was our new normal. And so podcasts started expanding. You saw many, many more new shows come out. Now we all figured out how to listen to them again. And then we went back into the office and things kind of changed again. And yet we're back. We are here. We are in this normal of whatever that may mean for you or look like. And people are listening to shows. They want to hear what others have to say. They want to learn from podcasts. They want to be entertained. There's a podcast on every topic and subject you can imagine, and people are showing up. 15% are listening more than last year. So that's growth. That's exponential growth. Now let's talk about where people are listening. In the US, 47% of podcast streams by users who are 18 to 24 and 45% of podcast streams by users 13 to 17 come from shows originating in another country. We are listening around the world. I just had last week, Chartable sent me a notification that I was charting in New Zealand. The week before, I was charting in Ireland. People around the world are listening to podcasts that are based in other parts of the world. How incredible is that, especially in today's world when there is so much fighting going on, that we can connect with other people from other countries, whether we know it or not. Someone is out there listening to a podcast who doesn't live next door to you, who doesn't live down the street from you or 30 minutes away in the next city. They're listening around the globe. So imagine that, whether you have your own show or you're guesting on a show, what kind of potential reach you have. How can your story affect other people that aren't in your neighborhood, that aren't even in your country or your state, but they're around the world? They're listening and they want to hear. And you can make such a huge impact and difference by sharing your story, by sharing your knowledge. How did you build your business? How did you launch your podcast? How did you write your book? Someone's listening, and you can affect that person by helping them figure out what's their next step. How can they do what you've done? It's completely unfathomable to me to think that there could be a 14-year-old on the other side of the world listening to me right now and thinking, you know what? Maybe I should launch a podcast, or maybe I should go write the book, or maybe this career choice that I'm considering, maybe my real career doesn't even exist yet, because that woman I listened to, she had a career for 18 years and then poof, she's in another industry that didn't exist when she went to college. That's huge, but that's the power of what podcasts are doing. Podcast ads are growing in popularity, and they've proven to be an effective format to drive business results. 62% of people who responded to the study said that they took action after hearing an ad during a podcast show, whether it was searching for a product, purchasing a product, or simply talking about it. Podcasts get people to talk. They get them to buy. I can attest to this when I share a book I love, especially books, because I talk a lot about books on here, but whether it's fiction or nonfiction, the moment I share this, I will get people who say, I hope you really meant that because I went out and bought the book on your recommendation. I know that podcasts move products, books, and services, because when we like something, we will sing its praises. This is especially true for me, as I said. If I don't like something, I tend to not talk about it. I'm not one of those people who will leave a horrific review. And so I'd rather stay silent than say, I really hated this. So when you know that you hear me talking about something, then you know I really, really like it. And I'm going to share it with everyone, because if it's making me happy, then it should make you happy. And I want to share that with all of you. So this is what a Podfluencer is. This is why the rise of the Podfluencer is becoming so great. And let's remember, podcasts have been around for decades, and yet the popularity is only now starting to really emerge. We're seeing such growth. And that's why it's important for you to be a part of this. I'm so excited to be a part of this industry, to see the growth and to see the impact that a podcast can have on lives. The fact that they change lives. I truly believe that. So if you're thinking about, what should I do? Should I go on a podcast? Should I guest on one? Should I host one? The choice is totally up to you, but the answer is yes. You should have podcasts as a part of whatever plan you have, whether it's for your branding, your marketing, your service, your product, whatever it is, a podcast should be included, because it's not only going to have the built-in know, like, trust factor, but it's going to bring you more marketing content. And as people are trusting more and more podcast hosts, because we're not fly-by-nights. We're here, we're showing up, we're consistent. This is episode 236. This is a lot. So you know that I'm here. You know that you can trust me. And that's the same for your other podcast hosts, the ones that you listen to every single week. You don't want to miss their shows. You know that you can trust them. So consider that the next time you're wondering, what should I do next for my business or for my brand? Well, are you trusting your podcast hosts? What if you then get that trust extended to you? What kind of a difference is that going to make for you in your business, in your branding, in whatever it is you're doing? And then don't forget to go at it, not from the perspective of, I'm going to go sell something, but I'm going to share what I know. I'm going to share where I've been. I'm going to share of myself as freely and as openly as possible, because when I do, that trust is then extended to me and people will hear it in my voice. They will want to come and work with me. They will want to buy my book. This is the attitude that you need to go in with, because it's going to be what changes everything. It's going to be the thing that allows the Podfluencers to embrace you and for your book, product, or service to also be embraced. So cheers to the Podfluencers out there. We are making a difference, each and every one of us, because people trust what we have to say. And that is so important. And it is such a gift. It's an absolute gift for someone to trust what you say, to like you, because you simply show up behind the microphone and you say what you have to say. So if you're a podcast host, don't take that lightly. Same thing if you're a guest. Remember how important it is to share your episodes and to thank your hosts for extending that trust that they have worked so hard to earn from their listeners to you. Cheers to the Podfluencers.